welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by my good friend, Sherry Winn. Sherry, welcome.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this. We always have such fun in our conversations, and I know that this is going to be just like that and always so jam-packed with insight. But before we get stuck in and carried away, as we are known to do, let me introduce you more formally to the people watching. So Sherry stepped into the world as a leader, first in sports, where she attained the highest level possible in athletics, the Olympics. She led college basketball programs for 23 years, where she won a national championship. And as CEO of the Winning Leadership Company, she's delivered over 3,900 hours of leadership programs, where she's developed Olympic-level leaders. Sherry's spoken to audiences as large as 14,000 and has spoken for companies such as Dell, McDonald's, and Adobe. She's spoken in the Gillette Stadium, airplane hangars, baseball diamonds, and too many hotel convention centers to mention. Organizations such as Dell, Adobe, McDonald's, and a host of multi-million and billion-dollar companies invest in Sherry's teaching each year because of the impact that she has. And I know from every conversation we've ever had, that investment is well worthwhile because you always have such great insight. But what a journey. What an amazing amount you've accomplished already. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
Well, I think people always want to know about the Olympic Games. And so we'll start there, right? I won't start from the date of conception. So we'll skip all that. We'll go to the Olympic Games.
Assume that happened.
So, people often ask, like, how'd you get there? And I think what I know is that at the age of 7, I actually said, I'm going to do that. Like, I watched the Olympic Games. I watched it on TV with my family, and they were so excited. And they were cheering. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do, right? I want to be there where my parents love me like they are loving these people on television right now. This is what I want to do. And the next day I was like, okay, I'm going to do jumping jacks because this is all I knew. I'm going to do jumping jacks. I'm going to do some push-ups and sit-ups. And I started training at the age of 7 for this journey. And along the way, of course, you hit obstacles and challenges and all those kind of things. But because I had dreamed about it so long and I had seen it, like I had imagined it, I had imagined walking into the stadium, I'd imagined being a part of the USA team, that it came true. So I really believe in that, when you imagine something until it seems like it's real, that it is real, it becomes reality. And I was fortunate enough to play in 1984 and 1988 in the Olympic Games. And then I played a sport called handball, which in the United States, people don't really play handball, right? It's not, they think it's like racquetball. I'm like, no, it's team handball. It's like soccer using the hands or water polo and land. And so when I got done, there was no place to coach handball. So I went back to my original sport, which is basketball. And that's how I coached in college for 23 years until I came into, I decided after 23 years, I knew that there was more that I wanted to give. So even though I was teaching and coaching my players much more than basketball, right? Because basketball is great, but literally how many of my players were going to play past their 4 years in college? Such a small percentage. So I decided that I wanted to embark on this other thing of doing motivational speaking and then doing leadership training and executive coaching. And so kind of all just because it's all the same. Like it's when you train the mind, which is consistent, and whatever you're going to do, you have to first train your mind and get your heart aligned with it, visualize it, and then come into full belief with it. Then that's when things evolve and you're able to actually live your dreams.
Oh, I love that. I was only saying to my friends the other day who was berating Scarlett because she was using her imagination. Went, that's so childish. And I was like, it isn't. I said, never get rid of your imagination. I said, who's into golf? I said, all of those big golfers, I said, they win the game here before they win the game here. I said, so you've so got to harness that. And I love that, like, you just embody that in everything that you do. And that brings me to my question. So you've written 5 books. 5. I mean, not what I mean. They say there's a book in all of us, but clearly you had a few more.
Clearly.
Which one is your favorite and why?
Well, the last book that I wrote, Winning Leadership, 7 Secrets to Being a Truly Powerful Leader. And the reason I love that is because I interviewed 200 leaders. across the United States and got their insights. Like it was, first of all, it was lovely to chat with each one of them. Like it was such a pleasure and a joy, entertaining, engaging, and then getting their secrets along with that. And so, really hearing from not theory, it's people living leadership right now. So
Yeah.
that was a phenomenal journey for me to spend the time with them, and hopefully the same journey for them. I can't speak for them, but I did maintain some lifelong friendships from that as well. I mean, I have people that I meet with on a regular basis, like once a month, from that interview process, that we're now friends, and we share our secrets of our misery, our secrets or misery of our journeys together. So it was really and it's a great book. It's jam packed full of information, not only for leaders who are coming into the moment, but for leaders who have been there for 25 years.
It is a great book. I had the privilege of reading it, and it's definitely worth picking up. It's one of those books that, for me, every time I go back to it, I find something different. It's another nugget in there that you're like, oh, that always seems to just match with what I need at that moment. And I think we sometimes, you should be super proud. And I think it's because you've encapsulated so many people's lived experience. So it's not theory. It's not opinion. It is based on 201, because yourself included, people's lived experience of actually how this happens in reality,
right.
How you respond when it's authentically going on, when it's right here, right now, not when we have the luxury of being able to plan for a potential scenario. And that
Right.
must have been, I can imagine why you've ended up with some lifelong friendships, because when people share their story with you, you get such a depth of connection, don't you?
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I asked people, and I was surprised, but not surprised by the answer. So I asked, "What's the biggest challenge that you've ever faced?" And I didn't say personally or professionally. I just asked, "What's the biggest challenge that you've ever faced?" And over 80% of the people that I asked said, "Myself." And I was like, oh, the magic, like it. And so that made me really happy to know that there's so many people out there who understand. Look, it's not the thing out there that's killing me. Like, it's not the thing out there that's stopping me. It's me. And so if I get past me, if I'm able to find the answers through me, then the obstacles will disappear. So I was really happy. In fact, the first chapter is called The Winning Factor, and that's what it is. It's about the ability to be self-aware.
Oh, I love that. And it's true, isn't it? I remember one of my most enlightening, but equally my most frustrating, probably is the kindest word I can come up with, moments, was when I realized that everything that has happened is as a result of me. So I have been my biggest obstacle, and therefore I was the thing I needed to get over. And whilst that was very liberating, it was also hard to give away that comfort blanket of being able to put the blame somewhere else. And I found a quote which for me I love, which is, I'm not the victim of my circumstance. I'm the product of my choice. And I think I'd been the victim of my circumstance for so long. And that journey to becoming a product of your choice, and realizing in everything that happened, I had a choice. Didn't always make the right one.
Who always makes the right one, right? But I think this, when we say we didn't make the right choice, I think that every choice that we make can be the very choice that we needed to make, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like a good choice. And when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But at the same time, that opportunity that allows us to learn from it, to move forward from it. So it was the right choice. We just didn't know it, because we had to go through the pain of living it to get to the outcome that we needed, right? So because I read a book once, and it just said, whatever choice you make is the right one. And I thought, well, that's a great way to look at it. Instead of looking at it like, oh, I was so stupid, I was so dumb, I can't believe I did that. Just to know that every choice you make is the right one, because it's going to put you on the right track to the opportunity that you need if you are willing to stand in it and learn from it. Like otherwise you just get bitter and you get mad, you get angry, and you're like, for the rest of your life, you're going to tell the story about how this happened to you. And, it wasn't
Mm.
fair. And I can't believe this person did this to me. And this is, wah, wah, wah. And of course, we all have done that before, which
Yeah.
keeps us living in the same experience. And then we can't move past it. And so we get to tell more stories of the same kind of experience.
Because we just attract more of it in, don't we? And I think it's that, I always say to Scarlett, everything's about choice. We make a choice. We make one that doesn't serve us. Beauty of choice. Make a different one. So don't hold on to the one you made. Go, it doesn't serve me anymore. I'm going to make a new one. And I think, if life's taught me anything, it's that everything in it is a lesson, a blessing, or both. So in those moments where I'm not feeling blessed, I look for the lesson, and that's where the blessing is always hiding. In the, as you said, it's the growth opportunity, it's the learning, it's the what are we going to know as a result of this that we would never have known if we'd not made that choice, no matter how bad that choice felt. In those moments when we want to label ourselves, don't we, as like, really?
Yep.
That's what you chose.
Well, and it's true. I mean, but it doesn't serve us well to label ourselves there, right? And we do stupid or dumb or ignorant or whatever we want to call ourselves, other worse names, and that keeps us in the past. It keeps us stuck in the story, and then it predicts our future, because if we're calling ourselves stupid, then we can't get to the future because we're going to live the past over and over again. But when we choose, and like you said, it's a choice. You're teaching your daughter such wonderful things. Once we get to it's a choice, then we get to choose what we want to feel about it. And we get to choose what we want to learn about it. And we get to choose what we call a win from it. And, I get so excited when I look back in my past. I see like the things that I would have labeled, really bad, like tragedy. It's a tragedy. Because the worst thing that ever happened to me also happens to be the best thing. Right. So when you look back and you're like, well, I endured 7 years of chronic pain where I couldn't sit, stand, or walk without pain. And I couldn't go to a movie theater because I couldn't sit long enough to watch the movie. And I couldn't, walk through a grocery store long enough to buy groceries. And at the time it was horrific. Right. It was terrible. And of course I labeled it all that. And I was a very angry person. But when I look back, that was the beginning of the evolution, right? That was the beginning of my evolution, to understand choices and to understand that, our response to the event equals the outcome, and to understand like what real humility was, what real empathy was, and some of those things. I mean, it was the direction that led me down the path of, and I'm not going to claim I'm 100% there, of unconditional self-love, right? It led me down that path.
I love that. And you're right. I don't think any of us can ever say that we're 100% unconditional self-love, but that's the goal, isn't it? That's what we're aiming towards. And I know from our previous conversations, sometimes it's that catching yourself in those moments where you're not demonstrating self-love, and then making a different choice, going, that's okay, I don't need to, before I'd catch myself in those moments, and then I'd wallow in it for a little bit longer. Or I'd hair shirt myself for the fact that I had dared to get it wrong and not give myself self-love. Whereas now I just go, no, I'm human. It was.
Next. I did. So recently I did this, Kim, this is kind of funny. So I flew, across the United States to Maryland. So I'm from Montana. So Maryland's on the other side of the country from us. And so I flew in, I got in about midnight. Next morning I get up to go to do a gig, right? To do a speaking presentation. I get there, I meet the event manager, talk to the event manager. I meet the people as they're coming in, talk to them, had the mic check and all that stuff. Give the presentation. People are like, oh, that's a great presentation. Finish the presentation. They're all like, that was wonderful. Love you. Leave, drive back to the airport. And I realize the next morning I gave them the wrong presentation.
Oh no.
So the first thing I did literally was laugh. Like, that's the first thing I did. I recognized, I was like, wow, because nobody said anything. Like, nobody in the audience said anything. The event director didn't say anything. And I was like, that was really kind of dumb. That was really a bad mistake. And so then I try to make it right. So I immediately, text the event manager and said, hey, I just realized I gave you the wrong speech. It's not what you paid me to do. I'm happy to make some, how can we make this right? and, followed that up with an email, same thing. And they're like, "Oh, we just loved you. It was great." And then so, I said, "I'll give you a free webinar. Like, let me at least do that." But I didn't in the past, I would have beat myself up. Like literally, I would have never forgiven myself. It would have been like 3 days, and I'd still been beating myself up for the mistake that I made. I would try to figure out why I made it and then beat myself up some more. And what was the most amazing for me was I gave myself grace. Like I immediately just said, "Look, you know, you did this. You were working on this other speech for Saturday. So that was a Thursday. You were thinking about Saturday. You weren't thinking about Thursday, and they loved it. So it's okay." And you tried to make it right and you admitted it because they might not have ever said anything to me, but I was like, no, I gotta at least go back and say I did this. Um, but the ability to self-forgive, that ability to say, look, I'm human. And as a human, we're going to make mistakes. And it's not the mistake that's so important. It's how fast you recover from it.
Yeah.
And so sitting in it wasn't going to make me better. Beating myself up over it was not going to make me better. I mean, taking some action toward, what can I do to make this right is obviously the right thing to do, but just the ability not to beat myself up, that freedom of moving past a mistake is one of the best things you can do for yourself. I mean, really, it truly is. And I was
Yeah.
so happy that I laughed. I mean, my first response was laughter rather than beating myself up.
And that's so good because that's such a shift, isn't it, from being in that place where your first response is like, how can you berate yourself in a way that you would never berate another human being ever in the history of the world? And I think, I know how brilliant you are at speaking, and I'm sure they probably didn't even notice it was the wrong speech because they got value from the speech that you gave, and that's what they bought into. But the fact that actually you went back and said, but it wasn't the right one, and actually let me make it right.
Mhm.
It speaks real testament to your values and to what you want to bring, because you could just look at it and go, they may never tell me, and clearly, they thought I was ace, and they were happy with it. Maybe they'll pay me next year to give them the speech that I should have done. But the fact that you didn't, you stepped in and went, do you know what? Actually, I got it wrong, and let me make it right. And I say to Scott all the time, it's never the mistake that defines us; it's what we do with the mistake, and that's where we get to make a better choice.
Yeah.
as long as we own it. So,
Right.
and that brings me on to your speaking, because you've spoken to like so many people, to so many audiences, and had such impact around the globe. What would you say is the number one takeaway that you want people to have when they hear you speak?
I think what we've been talking about really, one of my favorite speeches is called Unleash the Winner Within You. And uh, one of the pieces of that speech is the two most important words that you can ever say are the words "I am," because whatever you say after those words become your truth, right? And we don't understand, and people don't understand how that thoughts are things.
Yeah.
That what you think becomes your reality. It becomes what you live. And the way that we just don't even, we're not mindful enough of that. We're not mindful of the way that we treats ourselves. So if we just understood that thought, those thoughts are things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that the whatever we say after the words "I am," and I don't mean out loud, like it's the internal words that we use. It's that
Yeah.
internal sentence when we say things like, "I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not," whatever we say, right? How many can we say? "I'm not talented enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not," whatever we say, whatever we say, and I'm not, good enough is our favorite thing. I'm just not good enough. Well, those becomes our truth. And so really whatever, in almost every speech I give, somehow that's woven in, maybe said differently, but it's woven in, because when we get to the truth of the matter is that what we say to ourselves really counts. And what we say to ourselves is what we live. And if you don't like what you're living, then your choice is to change how you're thinking. And when you change your thoughts, you change your life, right? So I just think that's such a powerful awareness for people. And many people don't even know what they're doing to themselves. They have no idea what they're doing to themselves. And I know that you have a story about that, about looking in the mirror,
Yeah.
right? And to say things.
and I think it's true. I spent many years where I didn't even go beyond the definition of just I am not enough. I am not enough. You could add anything to that. I am not pretty enough. I was like, I'll just bundle it all in to one, and just, I'm just not enough in any capacity. And that led me to be an innate people pleaser, where actually I ended up losing myself. Because I just didn't get it. And for me, and I'm super grateful for the privilege of having my little girl. But she was my eureka moment. So when she was 9 months old, and I found a lump and thought I might not survive long enough to give her all of the wisdom, and whether it was wisdom, but all the things I've learned through my lived experience. And I went to write her the letter, the letter to pour all of that out. And where do you even start that letter? Because I had no idea where to start that letter. And I remember going up with this blank sheet of paper that had been glaring at me for at least an hour and a half, with my not enough was in full swing. I can't even write anything on this piece of paper. And I looked at her little face, and she was fast asleep, dreaming. And I remember saying in that moment, if I survive this, I will do whatever it takes to understand what I'm doing to myself to make sure that I undo that, because children don't learn by what we say, and what they learn by what we do and how we are and who we are. And I realized that unless I learned the introspection to fix what I was saying about myself, I was actually going to teach her to say it about herself. It was like the world stopped. I couldn't be responsible for that level of harm to this little earth angel that I've been gifted the privilege of guiding through her life. And so, it sent me on a 7.5 year journey of self-discovery, and meeting amazing people like you that helped me to really understand that, we've got to fix it in here first. We've got to be kind to ourselves and demonstrate that self-love to enable us to be kinder to others. Because somebody said to me once, can you, your kindness is almost sickening. I was like, oh, sorry about that. They were like, you'd do anything for anybody. I went, but not for myself. Not for myself. And now I have to look in the mirror. I'm a woman. I put mascara on. I've yet to meet a woman that knows how to do that without actually looking at themselves in the mirror. So I know at least once a day I'm going to have to do that. And so now I look at it and go, can I find something that I'm grateful for about the woman in the mirror? And that's been, for me personally, that's really helped me on that journey. And that's come from great people like you sharing the power of the I am. Know your I am. And if it's not serving you, rewrite it, because we are the author of our life, aren't we?
Absolutely. And it's funny because you said, unknowingly what parents give to their children. And I don't think there's a ton of parents, and there are some, right? But I don't think there's a ton of parents who intentionally feed their children bad things. Like, they don't intentionally do it, and they do it. So I was recently, my mom's 85. Recently went to go visit her. And so we're talking, and she says, I want to give you $2,000. I said, Mom, I don't need it. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm really, really good. And she goes, no, you need this $2,000 because you need to get your teeth whitened, because you shouldn't be on stage with your teeth that color. And so I was like, oh, and I don't say anything back to her. I said, I'm thinking, oh, this is that not good enough. Right? This is that not good enough thing. And how many times did she feed me that as a child? And how many ways did I learn that? She didn't mean it that way. She meant it as a gift, like, I want to give you something, like, for my heart. But what she said is, you're not good enough as you are. You need to go fix this. And I was like, oh, wow. And so I was thinking, no wonder I struggled with that. No wonder for years and years and years that this message had come through in many different forms, in many different ways. And, as from love, right? From love, from concern, from whatever it's masqueraded with. But I was just like, wow, so no wonder it was so hard, because I'd heard it so many times, I'd believed it, and became a belief of mine. And then I had to learn to turn that around. And so what I said to her was just really simple. I go, Mom, thank you so much for offering me the $2,000. What I'll do with it is I'll put it in a money market for you, and when you need it, I'll be happy to give it back. So I didn't even play into any of that,
Mm.
right? Whereas if I hadn't done the work, like you talked about the work that you get, that you did for you and the work I've done on me, I would have gotten mad and angry and upset and, said something back that I would later have regretted. But I just know that she meant it well. Like
Mm.
her intention in that was positive, right? Even though the back message was was terrible.
It was, but that reminds me of, I mean, that so resonates though across leadership, isn't it? The amount of people that I meet where, when you're giving people feedback, the first thing that you do, you give somebody constructive feedback, is they start to defend what they were trying to do, because they weren't trying to get it wrong. They weren't trying to upset you or mess you up in the example of your mum, but that was their impact. And I realized far too late in life, I realized if I start by setting the intention with people first and going, I think what you're trying to do is be really kind. I think what you're trying to do is give me a gift from your heart. I think you're trying to do all of this, which is brilliant. And I love that. And that's amazing. But can I talk to you a little bit about the impact you're having? Because you're not achieving that. You're way, way over here in what we're trying to do. But the good news is what you're trying to do is the right thing, and therefore we can work on that with you. But therefore you don't spend that wasted time where they're trying to defend that they're not a bad person, that they weren't trying to upset you, that they weren't trying to get it wrong, that they weren't trying to miss their mark, or whatever it is that you've given them. It's
Right.
often in the, as much as we need to reframe in our heads, isn't it? It's how we reframe what we put out when we're leading people.
Right. And so one of the things I love to say to people, so my coaching clients and when I'm doing, seminars and webinars, I'll say, if people knew better, they'd do better. So when they're coming at you a certain way, it's literally they don't know better. They
Yeah.
don't like. It's kind of what you were just saying right there. Is they don't know better. If they had a better way of doing it, they would have done it already. And so it's their unawareness and of whatever's going on. They just don't have the awareness that there's a better way to do that. They don't have the awareness of that. They don't have the awareness of that, how they sound or anything they're doing. And so your job as a leader is to help them grow into that. Like your
Yeah.
job is to help them come into that awareness. Right. And so you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be ugly about it. You don't even have to get mad about it. You just recognize, look, they don't know better. Because if they knew better, they wouldn't approach it this way. They would already approach it differently.
Yeah. I love that, because we have blind spots for a reason, don't we? We're blind to them. So unless somebody tells us what they are, we're gonna carry on. And I remember when I used to be in corporate leading big teams, I used to say to the teams when I first started off, if I do something that's really annoying or really irritating, or even if it seems really obvious to everybody else, that must be the impact it has, just tell me anyway, because I promise you it's never my intention to do that. So I'm probably blind to it. Even if a 5-year-old should be able to see that behavior is going to result in that impact, please do me the good grace
Yeah.
of telling me what it is and give me an opportunity to make the change.
Right.
And because you start with that, you then earn the right to be able to do the same back and share with people that the same thing, which is, I don't think this is what you're trying to do, but you need to know that this is
Mhm.
what's happening as a result of the way you're doing it. So the beauty is we can now work together on how do you find a better way of doing it,
Right.
and how do we grow that development. And that's why people invest in people like you and coming in and giving those great speeches that are actually, for me, having seen you speak, it's about that actionable stuff. It's
Right.
great to have somebody who can engage us and entertain us, and we come out, we're stoked, and then we go, and what do I do differently? So I'm not quite sure how I
Mhm.
put that into my life, how I put that into, what would that look like and sound like and feel like for me to do? Whereas when you speak, you actually give them that. And I wondered whether or not, I know you've got so many success stories, but I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing a success story from one of your clients that would kind of bring that to life, how that engagement really alters how they are and the impacts that has for them.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is something most recent. So I have a client that I'm working with. So a coaching client and a salesperson struggling to sell, right? Struggling. So, we start off with just what I've found to work is not for me to tell them what it is. Let
Yeah.
them go through, a lot of questioning, let them come to that aha moment. And so, we're talking about thought habits, which I often talk about because I know thought habits lead to your actions and that, it leads to your beliefs, which leads to your actions, which leads to your life. That's the life you're living. And it's all living because of a thought habit that you have. And so we're having this discussion. He says to me, I think I'm self-sabotaging. I said, oh, of course. Like, of course you are. Like, that's what we do to ourselves. It's not just you. It's like everybody. We all do that. And so I said, in what ways do you think you're doing that? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I don't know. So then he calls me and he's like all excited. He said, do you have a minute? And I said, sure. He goes, I know what it is. I said, well, what is it? And he goes, when I was young, I did some really bad things. I said, okay. And I said, when's the last time you did one of these bad things? And he goes, oh, decades. I said, decades. He said, decades. He said, so I don't feel like I deserve, to win these sales. I don't feel like I deserve. I said, decades. He's like, yeah, it's a decade. I'm like, decades. Let's get to the decades part.
That's the decades.
Decades part, I said, if you notice, I didn't ask you what you did. And he goes, yeah. I said, I don't care. Because the guy that I'm talking to now is not that guy you're talking about that was. And you can't live in your past to get what you want in the present. You have to let go of the past, especially if the past wasn't serving you well. I said, so you're not that guy. I said, tell me about the guy you are today. He goes, oh, I'm humble and I'm kind and I'm empathetic and I'll give people the shirt off my back. And I said, yeah, exactly. So let's let go of that because that's not serving you. And so he did. I mean, he was like, you don't care. I said, no, I don't care. I don't even care what it was because it doesn't make a difference to me. Well, because he understood what the problem was, like he understood he was self-sabotaging, he understood why he was self-sabotaging, he was able to let that go. And then he's literally, he just did a sell for a six-figure sell. So you got to
Wow.
think about that, right? About what that enabled him to do. And so, if we understand it's us, we can't quit looking at other things. If we just get it's us and we understand that what is it that I believe that's holding me against the thing that I want? And if I just change the belief, then the thing that I want it just gets enormous, right? It just becomes bigger and bigger because I can step into it. But you can't live what you want. You can't get what you want until you live it. So you have to live it inside. You have to live it in your mind. You have to live it in your heart before you can actually get it. And so that's what people do backwards, right? They don't live it first. They don't live as if they deserve it and they're worthy of it. And then that they should feel this way. They should have these great things. And so they're just trying to get something they don't believe in. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, you're blocking that. You're blocking that energy, aren't you? You're kind of going, yeah, I'm going to say this, but yeah, I don't really mean it. It's almost the I sometimes see it with people where it's their kind of get out of jail free card in case it doesn't actually come true. So it's like, I want this, but just on the inside, I'm at least going to tell myself. And I was definitely guilty of this, where I'd go for things and I'd be like, I believe I can get this. I believe I can deserve it. But on the inside, I'm just telling myself, if only they knew, I wouldn't get there really, which was my way of kind of balancing the scales in case it didn't happen. It's like, well, it's never going to happen, is it? You're actually pulling the scales away from you. You're setting that apart. But I love that kind of whole shift. And we do, don't we? We hold on to things that probably nobody else can even remember. And you're like, did you apologize for it? Did you say you were sorry? Well, let it go. What percentage of your life have you lived differently from that percentage where, you did things that you're not so proud of? So maybe you've given back enough now that you can go, okay, I'm going to put that down. It's a bit heavy. I don't like it. And I'm going to move forward and do things that do serve me, which
Right.
I think sometimes, I don't know if you see this as well, sometimes that can feel very selfish. I'm going to look to do things that serve me, but actually the piece, and you talk about this so eloquently, is I'm going to look to do things that serve me because it will enable me to serve others better, because I can't serve others wholeheartedly
Mhm.
until I find the things that best serve me.
Right.
And that, that for me was a real eureka moment when I got to that. It was like, oh, it feels really selfish. It makes me really uncomfortable.
Well, that's that whole thing though, Kim, that we're taught, like, you're
Yeah,
selfish is a bad word, but you can't give what you don't have. So
yeah,
if you
yeah,
can't give it. So if you don't have love for yourself, then you're judging other people all the time, right? Because what you're really doing is judging you for not being that person that you wanted to be. So now you're just throwing that everywhere else on everybody else. But
yeah,
but when you have like humility, then you can give it. When you have love, you can give it. When you have good communication skills, you can give it. But if you haven't invested in yourself, there's no possibility of ever giving it away.
yeah, yeah,
Right? Possibility because we're limited in what we can give. And so people like my mom, right? Love her. Like my mom, she's trying to give me love, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't show up that way. It didn't show up that way. She's trying, but because I'm just saying this because I know my mother, she doesn't love herself and never has.
yeah, yeah,
So it's been her, or been her challenge to love herself. And so now she's just putting that onto me because she doesn't know a better way to do it.
yeah, yeah,
And so you can have grace. Like I said, I was never mad at her because I totally understood her. Well, the only reason I understood her is because I understood myself. Like the
yeah,
only way you can do that is through all this work that you do. And so the more you give to yourself, the more you can give to others. And that's the greatest gift that we can give, right?
yeah, yeah. It is so true. You've got to do that journey back. And I say to my little girl all the time, if people don't hurt us on purpose, they're actually not even considering us at all. They're dealing with their own pain, and we're
Right.
just collateral damage. And then what we do is we try and bring them into our pain and make them deal with it. But they're not responsible for our happiness. We're responsible for our happiness. And to your point with your mum, she's trying to give love the best way she knows how, but she's
Absolutely.
never done the bit of work to
Right.
give herself love. So they have a discoloration of what that love's going to look like, and therefore, that's how it goes out in the world, isn't it? It's that, yeah. I read a bit of I think it was Florence Scovel Shine's book, and she talks in it about there's a monastery in India, and there they don't say good morning to each other ever. The way they introduce themselves when their greeting is, I salute the divinity in you. And they see the divinity, the goodness in everything and everybody. And
Right.
therefore, despite the fact that it is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by wild animals, none of them ever get hurt because they don't see the bad; they see the good in everything and everybody. And I was like, I really like that. So now, when I find myself in those moments of I'm getting frustrated with things, I say in my head over and over, I salute the divinity in you, I salute the divinity in you. And because I recognize it's not your fault that this is how far you've been able to do the self-reflection.
Right.
And therefore, I'm going to give grace to the fact that you're doing the best you can with how far you've come.
Right.
And
And that's what makes a difference, right? And every leader, if you could imagine a place where leaders were living that belief system, right?
yeah,
So what would happen is their people would want to stay there. Their people they want to, you talk about, retention. They don't want to go anywhere else. Why they want to go anywhere else? How good does it feel to be there? It's
yeah,
hard to leave something where you feel good, So I was just talking to a guy the other day. Um, it's a guy I'm interviewing for my next book, and he said he just sent his team to Florida for a 1 week vacation. His whole team, like he rewarded them with a 1 week vacation because he said, "Look, they've worked hard. They met all their quotas. They did what they were supposed to do, and this is what they deserve." Well, imagine if leaders weren't, if they saw that and they wanted to celebrate people, and they
yeah,
can celebrate people because they celebrate themselves, right? They can see the good in other people because they see the good in themselves. And so imagine that team. They love working where they work. They love, working for him. They can't wait to get back to work some more because it's a joy to be there. That's the difference. And it's really about, it's not just necessarily about the things that you do as much as who you are, right? So when you show up that way, because people are always asking me about how do you, get retention higher, and how do you get engagement higher, and how do you double your productivity? I'm like, it starts with your leadership.
yeah, yeah,
Like it really starts there because if those people show up that way, you have people who want to be there, people who want to work, people who are motivated to work, right? People enjoy coming to work. And so, you don't have people that are sitting on Sunday and going, I don't want to go to work. I have to go to work. I ought to go to work. I should go to, you don't have that. They're eager to go back into and passionate about it. And so, I think that the work comes. And so the companies that do this, that hire like people like you, like me, that hire people like us to come in, and we're not just working about the business. We want to say, who are you?
Yeah.
Let's examine who you are and why what you're doing is, helping your team, or are there things you're doing that you could better do that would help you show up differently to them, and that will change everything that's involved in your business.
It's so true, and it actually just, I think for too many years we've hidden behind things that we've been taught that actually are just wrong. Like I grew up, I cut my teeth in corporate for through the 90s and the early 2000s, and it was like keep your home life and your work life separate, leave your problems at the door, and so you can't, because you go where you go. So they come with you because your thoughts go where you go. So actually, we need to be able to learn how to hold the space for people to kind of get through whatever they're getting through. And we will all have heard the sticks and stones break our bones, but names will never hurt us. And look at the rise of mental health challenges we've got as a result of the fact words hurt, and the words that hurt us the most are the ones we say to ourselves. Because we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never dream of talking to another human being. No matter how angry we can be as a human being, we always turn that anger inward on ourselves at a greater multiplication, don't we? So I think being able to help people learn how to change some of that thinking, how to realize that actually, I learned to lead, you've got to bring your whole self.
Right.
All of it, warts and all, and channel it appropriately to be authentically who you are, because that's going to be what people will buy into, and that's going to be what affects change, not only across your business and your team and your organization, but also it kind of goes into your rest of your life as well, doesn't it? It just makes everything elevate.
Right. And that's why I think that it's the power of leadership. When I look at leadership, and I think, the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, because if you have a great leader and then they impact their team, which goes back and impact their family, which goes and impacts the community. Right. And so when you have that going on, I mean, think of the incredible positive influence that the ripple effect that you're creating. It's just amazing what can happen as a result of having a good leader. It's just not about the company or the business, but it filters down into people's lives. So when I was coaching, I used to have players that, I teach them all kinds of things, because I knew basketball was, they're not going to dribble the ball after they leave. Like, they were done. They're going to go on with their lives. And so, people that now contact me and say, Coach, man, I'm so glad you talked about controllable factors, or I'm so glad that you taught us conflict resolution. Or I'm so glad you taught us, like, how to have, how to be an assertive communicator. I'm so glad that because it impacted them forever, and it changed their relationships with the people, their families. Now that's something, right? That's something. That's why I think that leadership is the key, to making our countries better. Because we can't sit around and wait for a government to do it. That's going to be a long wait.
It's true. I agree, and I think every one of us is a leader of somebody, because we're a leader of ourselves first. Right. And if we can learn those great leadership skills and lead ourselves better, then that ripple effect is gonna be what blossoms out, isn't it, and helps us to collectively lead our society in a better way. Sherry, I could chat to you all day, as you know, because I always love our conversations. They're always so packed with insight, but I'm very conscious of time. You've shared so much value and insight already, but if there were one parting piece of advice that you could share with us, what would it be?
Well, I would say to you that, understand this is a lifelong journey, right? And so enjoy the journey, and also know that you're probably not going to get it all done. Like, there's always another layer to learn. And so investing in, like, yourself by reading books or doing meditation or having a coach or a mentor. I mean, really investing in yourself, because it helps your journey along the way, and it helps you give that kind of self-love that you need. so that you can laugh when you make a big mistake and you can just, give yourself grace and then, go forward from that point. So it's just really investing in you, like know that you're worthy of investment and however that investment looks.
I love that. And while we're talking about investment, you have been really, really kind and offered a free 15-minute discovery call for anybody listening or watching this that wants to be able to experience how you can help them to really change that mindset and get onto the winning mindset, which I am so, so super grateful for you offering. And for anybody out there listening and watching, I promise you, take the opportunity. You will not regret it. I have the absolute privilege of calling this lady my friend and being able to connect with her very regularly. And it is always a source of joy, of insight, and of growth. So, Sherry, thank you so very much for sharing that with the audience today. And thank you so very much for sharing that with me so consistently, my friend. Until next time, take care.